Let's talk about accents today. The first thing I want to say is that your accent has absolutely nothing to do with your vocabulary. For instance, when I say something like, "Oh, je m'appelle William Ofori," well, there's a pattern that this particular language follows. Also, when I say, "My name is William," there's also a pattern that this follows. This has absolutely nothing to do with vocabulary. This has to do with a sound pattern. And whenever we are learning a new language, the first thing that our mind actually tries to grasp is not vocabulary, it's actually a sound pattern. So, for instance, one of the mistakes we make is that when someone sounds audibly appealing in a particular language, we feel, oh, they speak the best of that language. It's not always the case. And also, we tend to think that when someone doesn't sound the best per the norms, we tend to think that their language speaking capability for that language is quite low. That is also not always the case. So, languages, or when we are speaking accents, they have to do with sound. That is all there is to it. So, before we even get to the issue of accents, let's talk even about language, sound, the sound of language, the sound that languages make, the sound that we speak when we are speaking, the languages make. So, for instance, when we are learning a new language, the first thing that our mind tries to grasp is not vocabulary, it's actually the sound pattern. An increase in vocabulary creates a pattern for our mind that makes it easy for it to catch it and say, oh, so this is how this particular language sounds. And whenever we learn new words, it makes it easier and easier and easier. So, what I always keep in mind, what I always remember is when I'm teaching new learners, when I'm teaching ESL, I always focus first of all on the sound, not not vocabulary. I mean, vocabulary assists, but a lot of times when I'm teaching, that's why in the beginning there are a lot of songs, there are a lot of songs that make it easy for the kids to actually familiarize with the sound pattern of the language. Now, from language, let's get onto accents. Accents are like a second level, or if I should say, where we have a story building. Language is ground floor, and accents are gonna be like second floor. So even in a single language, there are different accents. And for a single language, it's different because people in different places pronounce things in different ways. It still, again, has absolutely nothing to do with your vocabulary. It just has to do with how the sounds are made or how the sound pattern is. So, for instance, in Africa, my African friend is going to say something like this. It doesn't necessarily mean that his pronunciation of that language is wrong. I mean, it has nothing also to do with pronunciation, the correctness of your pronunciation. An accent doesn't have anything to do with the correctness of your pronunciation. A lot of times we teachers make this mistake and we think that we have to let the people or the kids say things in a particular way. Well, that's okay, that's normal because you are teaching them a particular accent and we grow up sounding like the people we listen to. So that's okay. But for instance, there are some times that in certain words, I'll give you an example. Girl, Girl. So some people will say, because of the IR, they're going to say, girl. Some people are going to say, girl. Well, if you're an English speaker, both of these words sound really clear. So, for instance, when someone in the UK says, "Can I have a bottle of water?" you can understand what they're saying, right? I mean, you can tell that they want a bottle of water. Does it mean their pronunciation is right or wrong? It has nothing to do with that. Because language is just for communication. And if you're able to speak and someone understands, it means communication has happened. So accents don't necessarily have to do with right and wrong pronunciation because accents differ from place to place. And people have learned to say certain things differently. Accents just are specific to specific people. That's all. It has nothing to do with vocabulary. And I think also it has nothing to do with how right or wrong something is pronounced. So, bird. Well, someone can say it and another person can understand. So, basically, specific to them, they can understand. Who are you to say it's wrong? So, for instance, something like pigeon. I don't know if you know about pigeon English. If you don't know it, you might Google it. It's basically something called broken English. It's a language. Pigeon is a language. You might say pigeon is wrong English. Well, what is a language then again? They can communicate, they can understand each other, they have whatever it takes to say whatever they want. So, specific to them. For instance, something like patois. Is it English or is it patois? What is it? Well, they can communicate with it, whatever their accent is, as long as it's serving its purpose. There's not necessarily a right and wrong here. So I think a lot of times when you talk about accents, we have to shift the conversation from the whole idea or the perception of right and wrong pronunciation to the purpose for which those particular pronunciations are made. It's just specific to specific people.